Today is Tuesday, January 10th, 2012, and this is Vos de Sueños After Dark. Today, we have So Long and Thanks for All the Ponies, Parts 10 and 11. Author's note. Made it to double digits. If you like this fic, but find the medium of text too bland, I recommend you check out Vos de Sueños audio recordings. I came back from basic training to find he had done a great job up to 8. He hasn't done 9 yet. I don't know if he's noticed I'm still alive yet. Oh god, now he's going to read this at the start of the chapter. Meta. Meta indeed, SirGinger. And thank you very much for the compliments. The infinite improbability drive is one of the most utterly baffling devices ever constructed, both in its effects and its inception. Because it was not invented in the usual way, but simply called into existence in the most smart-assed way imaginable, there has never been a successful attempt to build another one. In the short time for which it remained in the possession of the Imperial Galactic Government before its theft by said government's own president, the inner workings of the device were pored over to absolutely no success. Attempts at recreating the device resulted in useless heaps of junk, and attempts at recreating the first inception of the device failed miserably. It has been theorized that now that one already exists, the creation of one is no longer virtually impossible, and, therefore, a finite probability. In short, because it should logically be easy to create a second machine, it is impossible to do so. This is just one of the many mysteries raised by the reciprocal nature of infinite improbability, which has driven at least 4 eminent logisticians mad. All that can be said about the machine for certain is that without the small, infinitely pure nugget of gold within the device, it is simply a giant paperweight or doorstep of curious design. What is odd is that this particular nugget is demonstrably an ancient artifact of incredible importance to the safety of the galaxy. So, how it ended up simply appearing out of nowhere in the middle of the machine is yet another mystery. The most recent mystery of the machine is one that no pony even knows about, since Dash and Zaphod simply assumed that they had drunkenly activated the machine as one of those ideas that seem to make so much sense whilst intoxicated. The question is actually, how exactly did the machine activate itself on its own the previous night, and why did it travel to Gurgen? And, for that matter, why is it even now leaking chocolate milk? The library of Maxamegalon University is so large, and so very old, that it is estimated that since its construction approximately 400 unique species have evolved there, all from the bacteria living on sandwiches and so on left behind by the original construction workers. Furthermore, its size is such that one could wander through the building's exquisitely sculpted halls for weeks before spotting hide or hair or tentacle. In fact, so little is used these days, the vast majority of the library is only a few years away from being declared a nature reserve in its own right. So, why should Maxamegalon continue to allow it to exist on the private land, given that it now exists as little more than a place for research papers to be sorted by automated systems, only to be left untouched forever? Simply because the library looks very good on the brochure. As such, when Twilight finally arrived at the impressive front doors, the outside was polished to a shine, whereas upon entering, dust a full foot thick flowed out like disturbed snow. She opened her mouth to sneeze, only to be pulled back hurriedly.
If you sneeze in there, we won't be able to see through the dust for weeks.
Pinkie's voice was muffled by the towel wrapped hastily around her mouth. She then produced 3 more towels, apparently from nowhere.
Put these on. Is it just me?
Applejack began as she expertly knotted the towel around her mouth.
Or do these things come in handy all the darn time? Of course, silly. A towel is the only tool you need. That silly doctor can keep his screwy driver thing. A towel does so much more. Doctor?
Twilight asked.
Doctor who? Doctor Who's, actually, Twilight. Did you get a chance to talk to him while he was here with us?
Twilight's eye twitch really was developing nicely. She didn't even bother asking for an explanation, storming through the door to the promise of literature.
Pinkie, do you mean that stallion with the time doohickey cutie mark was an alien too? Oh yeah, I guess he was. Anyone else I should know about? Well, maybe. It depends. There is some pony who sounded like some pony I met once, but I don't think it was really in that episode, so I'm not sure. What now?
Pinkie slipped a little hurriedly in behind her purple friend. Applejack looked at Spike.
I wish she wouldn't do that. Who do you think she was even talking about? I haven't got any idea. At first, I thought the way things were explained why she just is the way she is, but maybe she just is anyway.
The door slammed shut behind them, blowing eddies through the dust. Twilight was a few meters away, looking distractedly around. There were shelves on the walls, but there was nothing on them at all.
Where are the books? Maybe if we go further in. This is just the entrance.
Applejack placated. It is a sad fact that Maxamegalon University Library actually contains not a single book. It will take almost an hour before our favorite ponies realize this, and there is no point in detailing the harrowing journey it took to arrive at this conclusion. All the research papers which are physically entered to its halls are quickly consumed by the out-of-control fauna within, and all digital copies are sent straight to the central memory module. In fact, the entire library building, all its hundreds of square kilometers, exists solely as a testament to the days when the entire sum of the university's knowledge was not stored on the central memory module. Every book, every paper, every experiment ever contained within the library has been meticulously stored within its vast memory bank. Twilight was just about the point of a full-scale meltdown when finally the ponies found a room with something other than empty shelves and trails left in the dust by book bats and library lizards. This room was far bigger than any so far, easily large enough to take in Applejack's barn, should the event ever arise where it needed to be hidden in such a way. In this last room was a monolithic sphere. It floated unsupported, thousands of trailing cords like webs of a horizontally incompetent spider trailing from its silvery vastness. It was composed of thousands of discs, each one's breadth creating the illusion of a single unbroken orb, and spinning irrespective of the others around it. All of these were encased in a clear sheath of silvery glass. In the dim light of the room, it floated like an indoor moon, appearing to shimmer as each disc span. Each cable led to a workstation on the ground. Twilight's reaction was subdued. There was something about books that just felt right. The smell of the paper, the imperfections in each page, the feel of something old. But this thing did have the raw knowledge of millions. It is a rare occasion when one is presented in a situation where one has exactly as much knowledge as one needs. Here, Twilight's search for knowledge, followed in the most direct method possible, has led to more knowledge than she can ever use, and in a form where it would be most difficult to find. But, somewhere out there in the vast dust speckles of the cosmos, their friends are in a situation where more knowledge would certainly be extremely helpful. Knowledge about the precise, or indeed imprecise, dangers of the planet they now walk on. Knowledge which, in accordance with galactic regulation for maximum tolerances of suspense, you will now be told. The planet Gurgen is a pleasantly located planet, even better placed in the Goldilocks zone of stellar distance than any other. Never too hot or too cold, warmish days blending into pleasantly cool nights, frequent intense bursts of rainfall fit to leave one feeling refreshed, and just the right occasional swampy bits where water met mud. For any life form looking to come into existence, they could hardly have found a cushier place to do it than Gurgen. For this reason, life in fact erupted entirely independently in no fewer than 67 locations. Creatures which did not even have the common element of DNA crowded this busy planet. For many years now, The planet has had primarily one branch, and indeed species doing very well for itself, and one or two other groups barely clinging on. This branch may or may not be responsible for the planet's lifeless appearance, the total lack of any flora or fauna, and the lack of any remnant of the species which once called this one-time lush planet home. That much suspense falls well within guidance and law. Rarity had always thought of herself as a pony who in principle enjoyed walking. It made her feel better to think of herself as a walker. It was exercise that was somehow distinguished. However, now she felt walking was not nearly as pleasant as it had seemed before. This might have had something to do with her inability to procure herself a parasol. A high note of anger broke through the silence of the walk.
"Are you okay, Rarity?"
Fluttershy whispered.
"I just can't believe how ungenerous he is being. He wouldn't even let me have one of his parasols."
Ahead, Zaphod was using his magic to control one parasol for each head and 10 or so more held higher to make a pony-shaped patch of shade fall by his side. It was a rather pointed invitation which none of the girls had yet taken him up on. But, with the heat increasing, with the light from above and the reflection of the lifeless sand below making her squint and feel lightheaded, Rarity had had just about enough of this.
"I've had just about enough!"
This time, she was loud enough for Zaphod to hear her, distracted as he was by attempting to subtly move towards Dash.
"Bad enough for what, baby? I'm relating to this place." "Mr. Beeblebrox, why precisely are we walking around at random in this desert?"
"I don't know, baby. Excitement, adventure, really wild things. A chance to get away from that bloody robot and that bloody computer," he said, vocally rolling his eyes on each swear word.
"But there happens to be nothing in the way of excitement or any of it in this place."
They were building up to a quite nice bicker at this point, and any aficionados of bickering would have been disappointed by Fluttershy's intervention at this point.
"Can anybody else hear that?"
All eyes flicked to her. She cowered against the sand, suddenly remembering herself.
"I mean, it's okay if you don't, and if you do, you don't have to say."
But, now that the silence reigned, they could all hear the faint music coming from somewhere.
"That sounds really jolly."
Rainbow Dash spat out the uncool word with contempt, somehow speaking the secondary quotation marks to indicate her official stance on the word. Whoopee! Zaphod was all enthusiasm again. Here at last might be found adventure, excitement, and, even somewhere, really wild things. When the ponies crested a ridge, they saw an amazing sight. A vast circle of greenery with a nucleus of dozens of buildings arranged in a ring. At its center was a tall pole, which none of them could quite identify. The music was somehow familiar, and seemed to be radiating from the distant settlement.
"Where have I heard this before?"
Rainbow Dash's head was now cocked, and a frown appeared where she fought to remember. It was a bouncy tune, catchy and cheerful. All three of them looked at each other.
"Pinkie Pie's Polka!"
They said in unison so perfectly that attempting to reproduce it would reduce many sound professionals to weeping fury. What none of them saw was the small swarm of brightly colored creatures which had been following them for a few minutes began to fly in time to the beat before flying off towards the town. All right, and that was Chapter 10, and now on to Chapter 11 of So Long and Thanks for All the Ponies by SirGinger. Author's Note, Extra Long Edition. Happy New Year, every pony! Guess what one of my resolutions is? To update every week from now on to the best of my ability. I will be studying engineering, working at my day job, and parading around and doing more training for the Army. So I will have to find time to write, but I do intend to see it through. Also, a word as to why I write these notes. Since EQD doesn't let me comment without a Blogger account anymore, I don't really interact with the comments at all. And this is the only way I can sort of talk to you guys outside the story. I do read all the comments. Props to Nemrin for getting the joke I left out incidentally. So please comment, especially if you have criticisms. Are these notes self-indulgent? Hell yeah. But none of these are required for reading the fic itself, so feel free to ignore me as I ramble on up here. Time, as the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy frequently points out, makes folds of a soul. Something which may have made perfect sense at the time may seem totally without reason at a later date. According to the witnesses to the events leading up to the current state of affairs on the planet Trivitor, they seemed to be a good idea at the time. This is all they will say on the matter, which is a shame because at present not a single historian, scientist, or indeed God has yet been able to work out exactly what occurred and why. All that is known is that the planet Trivitor is now currently uninhabitable because of the presence of approximately 186,000 giant lobster-like creatures, apparently composed of candy floss. This would normally be a problem solved easily enough, except that each has, in some uncertain way, been implanted with a bomb capable of taking out half the galaxy, wired up to its fear sensors. The implication that this current situation was not only set in motion deliberately, but by ponies completely and utterly in command of their own senses and wits, is terrifying in its own way. But most people, upon hearing the story, are more worried about why things are this way than they are about the potential for half the galaxy to nearly disappear in a single instant should one of the aforementioned creatures be so much as startled. It seemed like a good idea at the time. Indeed, having a likely cause of utter annihilation so conveniently unsolvable has done wonders for the lives aware of it, and they have taken Carpe Diem well and truly to heart. One thing that seemed like an excellent idea at the time was for the University of Maximegalon to spend the entirety of its budget on importing its entire stock into a single memory bank. The theory was that it would be far easier to access than the alternatives, and therefore would save time and therefore money in the long run. Unfortunately, due to the incomprehensibility of confusing copyright laws in the galaxy, the database became completely untouchable. Digital rights management meant that in all the yottabytes of information, barely anything was accessible without the correct payment by the university to its respective author. The university simply accepted this and paid for nothing at all. What was important was that they had a library which technically had more information than any of their rivals. The students had long since been using their copies of the guide, or the Encyclopedia Galactica for those with traditional views and no friends, for all research purposes. Light flared in the library. It flared violently with the fire of a magical being who really and truly has been pushed too far. What? Twilight jumped around, approaching Pinkie Pie with murder in her eyes. What in the world is DRM and why can't I get anything? She jabbed at the offending console with each word. Why won't it work? Pinkie moved across to have a read. Well, that's not very nice at all. What do we do? Twilight's hair, forever a useful indicator of just how closely she was holding on to her sanity, was in a state that even the Vandergraaf generator worshipping Wookiees of the planet Staticulon would call a bit out there. I guess we could just check that there guide? Applejack's voice entered the conversation with the warmth and comfort factor of a good southern whiskey. Does it have anything about places where we could find that doggone ship? Twilight's head flicked back to Pinkie. Would that thing even have what we need? Well, probably, but... So we came here for nothing? The library does have more detail. For Celestia's sake, Pinkie, I can't get any of it. She whimpered. I can feel it right there. AJ? Pinkie turned to the work pony. Yeah? Look up probability in the guide, please. It'll be under P. And Twilight? She turned back.
Just look at the cover, please. I am not panicking. But look at how large and friendly the letters are.
Twilight bit the retort back. This is fortunate because it would have been unprintable anyway. The letters actually were somehow comforting. Their precise shape, color, font, size, and placement somehow instilled a calm of their own. She took a deep breath and began swearing anyway. For reasons of decency, the telling of this story has been edited to a more suitable for an audience of home planet here based audience. All words which remain unsavory on audience home planet here have been replaced with far nicer ones. We apologize for the inconvenience.
Biscuits! Why the bunnying sugar did you leafing make us get all the happy way out to this Mitten's hole of a place if the hopping piece of cake book we've had all this rainbow time had the right muffin answer this whole puppy time? I don't understand this crazy summer universe. I haven't had a daisy drink in way too long, and now the place I thought I could enjoy doesn't even let me in. So, the whole adventure we just went on served no function at all. Well, it did make a good story for later. Can you imagine telling people we traveled so far when I had the answer on me this whole time?
Pinkie giggled.
It is kind of funny, right? Kitten, sunshine, sparkles, frosting, sweet Celestia hugging me in my fountain candy. Ooh. What? Oh, you wouldn't have read it anyway.
They were interrupted by Applejack triumphantly holding up the guide. In that same authoritative, calm voice began to speak, silencing the argument. Zaphod, Fluttershy, Rarity, and Dash began the walk to the buildings huddled together in the middle of the circle of green. The green was crops, actual living plants, which had an exact border on the totally lifeless desert. If any of them had taken the time, they would have realized that though the music was barely audible at this distance, nothing lived outside its range. None of them did, though, so none of them realized just how much safer they became when they stepped across the border. Right now, first and foremost in Zaphod's mind was the possibility of a fun new group to meet and impress, and maybe try some new drinks from. Foremost in the minds of his three companions was to find out exactly why Pinkie Pie's Parasprite Polka was playing here at all. Rarity spoke first.
Surely that can't really be it. It totally is. I think I remember that day pretty well, and that's definitely the tune.
Dash protested.
But surely it can't be. How would they have heard it out here? And why would they play it so loudly? Maybe she learned it from them.
Fluttershy's voice broke in.
I mean, maybe these ponies just really like this song. I mean, I do. And then Pinkie heard it, and she liked it too, so she brought it with her.
Rarity considered this.
You might be right there, Fluttershy darling, but there's only so much one can take of this song, surely. They seem to be playing it fairly loudly.
Hey guys, Zaphod's voice called back. We got company. Indeed, several ponies were now coming out of them. Fluttershy wondered if she had ever before seen such a woebegone set of ponies. They seemed to have gone in for wide, bloodshot eyes, messy hair, broad forced grins, and rags stuck firmly in their ears which lay down as if in surrender. Her heart, already delicate from concern for that poor Marvin, went out to these ponies. It was all she could do to not immediately begin mothering them on the spot. As it was, the pony leading his four friends spoke first as the groups grew within earshot. We don't have any room.
Sorry, baby, I don't get your meaning. Say again, Mon Amigo.
We don't have the room, or the food, or the bloody patience for any more damn ponies.
Whoa!
Zaphod was taken aback.
Frosty cool, bro. We're just passing through. Heard the fruity music and just wanted to come in.
Fruity music? Fruity bloody music? His eye twitched violently as the others behind him shuddered in unison.
Yeah, we wanted to ask you about that song you guys seem to like so much.
Dash said carefully. Like? Why? Do you have any idea about that thing? Do you have any idea or know where you are? He stared at their confused faces, and his anger melted slightly. You genuinely don't know, do you?
We know this planet is called Gurgen,
Fluttershy offered.
but I guess we'd better be going now.
She turned to run away, only to be stopped by Dash's outstretched hoof.
So, what exactly are you talking about?
The building our ponies found themselves in was a smallish hole, not quite soundproofed against the music, apparently despite the best efforts of the owner. Its cheerful bouncing tune could still be made out. That song is really beginning to get on my nerves, Rarity complained. Something like a shudder went through the assembled hosts. The de facto leader simply stared at her with something rather like hatred. How long have you been hearing it?
Almost half an hour now. Couldn't you please change the song?
She battered her eyelids. That song, he sounded haggard, has been playing non-stop for the entirety of my life. I have never not heard it. Our heroes looked at one another, appalled. But dear, Rarity placed a soothing hoof on his leg.
Why can't you turn it off?
Because it's the only damn thing keeping the parasprites from eating literally everything we own. Parasprites are some of the most successful life forms in the galaxy, and certainly some of the most dangerous. No pony knows for sure where they came from originally, but now every galactic neighborhood has one or two infestations. As a general rule, they would initially seem harmless until their population increased beyond the local production capability of the planet they inhabited, or some pony was foolish enough to stop them from eating food. At this point, they would begin attempting things that looked like food, or used to sufficiently be alive that they could be called food. Eventually, they would move on to eating the ground itself, and even then only if something had powerful enough magic to stop them from actively eating living creatures. Unless, of course, some population had some limit to it, such as the deployment of a serious cybernetics poker life tower. For enormous expense, a vast speaker tower could be set up to play a song which, for some unknown reason, attracts parasprites like Vogons to paperwork. This represents just about the only product of the Sirius Cybernetics Corporation which consistently works, as continued payments depend on there being living beings to pay them. At the base of each tower is a high-voltage parasprite emancipation grill. The overall effect of one of these towers to create a circular zone in which no parasprite will even attempt to eat anything, and as such, crops can be grown in safety. It also keeps the population down enough that the planet in question is unlikely to ever wake up one morning to discover it no longer exists so much as a planet as a giant ball of adorable tiny little voracious monsters. This does unfortunately come at the expense of the sanity of any occupant after a few decades. But then, one can never have everything. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy has a lot to say on the subject of locational probabilistic variances. The part of the article relevant to our heroes is quite far in, so we will skip ahead to it. This is both for reasons of concision and the simple fact that most of it makes no sense to anyone who has not spent an unfeasible amount of time studying hyper-advanced metaphysical mathematics on a quantum level. The planet Medius is noteworthy chiefly because of its singular adherence to the law of averages, and, therefore, the laws of probability. Both the planet itself and its naive flora, fauna, and citation sentience relate directly to the average for the galaxy, apparently with no causal link whatsoever. It relates so perfectly that what was previously a long, expensive, and pointless exercise, the Galactic Census Report, has now become merely pointless. All results are now obtained simply by direct observation of Medius. According to the census, the average sentient being in the galaxy has 3.4 legs, 3.4 arms, and owns not only a hyena, but 1/10 of a firearm. and most of a 1.8 bedroom house. This is literally true for a citizen of Medius. Furthermore, all coins flip with monotonous regularity, heads, tails, and so on. Quite why the famously inconsistent applied laws of probability should choose to place this planet under such duress is a mystery, and is certain to remain one for the foreseeable future, which is naturally all of it. This only leaves one question, as in, a totally logical universe, a planet obeying averages would have a population consisting on 18 bacteria and 1,000th of a toe of a sentient being. It is possible that this would just have been too dull for the universe to bear. And that is parts 10 and 11 of So Long and Thanks for All the Ponies by SirGinger. Join me next week for Past Sins. So long, and thank you for joining me. This is Vos de Sueños signing out. Safe travels, every pony.